come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen Character Discussions. I'm Sid Part 2. Joining me today is the Comics Kid 2099.
Hello.
And as a special guest today, we have the Vacuuminator.
Hey, it's me. It's back. He's back. He's back again. He's back for another guest spot on Geeky Gentlemen to talk about his favorite character of all time, because I guess Ian, in his infinite wisdom, figured that he being me, should get around to doing that somewhere online before Hurricane Florence comes and fucking annihilates him tomorrow.
Man, pronouns are fun.
Yeah.
So, Ruben picked our character, and that character is?
SuperGirl.
Yeah, and I knew Vac was a big fan, so I wanted to get him on for this. So, Ruben, what made you want to talk about SuperGirl?
I just recently read a book called SuperGirl Being Super. It's a 4-issue miniseries, just came out within the past 2 years, I think. And I am looking it up right now to see who the writer was. The artist was Zor-El Jones. She did a graphic novel called Lady Killer that was about a serial killer, or well, kind of a serial killer who's also a house mom. But this book was written by Mariko Tamaki, who's done a lot of Wolverine stuff that I haven't read. But this was kind of like the Ultimate Universe version of SuperGirl. Very interesting. And I've always, I guess I've always been kind of neutral on the character. Like I've seen some SuperGirl stuff I didn't like, and I've seen some stuff I liked quite a bit. But this really got me interested in her.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because I don't really have much of an opinion at all on Supergirl. Like, I like Superman in a general sense, and I've been getting more into the character over time. The Bendis run is certainly getting me more interested and invested. But I've never had, like, much of an opinion on Superman. I'm just like, yeah, he's around, he's cool. And so, like, his tangential universe kind of characters, I tend to be like, yeah, I'm sure they're great or whatever, but I'm barely connected to Superman, so I don't really get invested in all the others. But, you know, that being said, I've seen Supergirl and stuff and liked her before. There's things, you know, I like her in Justice League. I like her in the Batman Superman Apocalypse movie to some degree. You know, there's things here and there that I've enjoyed her in. How about you, Vac? Why are you so into Supergirl?
All right. Well, I've been kind of sitting over here, cracking my knuckles, getting ready to get into this because, I mean, you guys seem to have like a very casual interest in the character, but let me show you my notes that I have, or at least let you hear my notes that I have on this character. Supergirl is my favorite fictional character of all time in any medium. She is a character that means a great deal to me personally, because when I discovered the character, it was at a time in my life that I was struggling with depression quite a bit. And I don't mean to turn this into a downer podcast, but like I was going through just some really bad stuff in my head. Nothing really in my life that was making me that way. I was just depressed for whatever reason. It's so long ago that I can't really remember the causes or like what I was thinking anymore. But at the time, I was also watching the quite a bit of reruns of Justice League Unlimited, and Supergirl has a number of guest starring episodes in that show, and I got very interested in the character from those episodes. And I went and looked her up and looked into her origin and what kind of she's about, and started reading some of the stories through the methods a kid who doesn't have a comic shop and lives in a rural area can back in 2006, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, at less than legal activities. And it's just there's a fundamental difference between Supergirl and Superman that makes Supergirl way more interesting and way more compelling of a character to me, and that is that unlike Superman, when she came to Earth, she was already a teenager. She didn't come as an infant. She wasn't raised as a human. She learned how to fit into human society, but for the most part, she's basically a Kryptonian, and she's the only Kryptonian who came to Earth with knowledge of Krypton, and instead of losing their shit or going crazy or being super depressed or becoming a supervillain, she chose to just lace up her boots and start going out and doing good every day and trying to help others have better, more happy lives with her powers. And I found that incredibly compelling, especially at that young age. Just like I used to have this notion in my head of no matter how bad it gets, if somebody who basically lost everyone and everything they've ever known or loved and then got sent to a planet that's far less advanced than theirs can still put on a smile and go out and help people every day and have a good life, then damn it, so can I.
That's really interesting, and I do think that's one of the aspects of Supergirl that I find particularly interesting. There's a lot of discussion around Superman and exactly what he qualifies as a immigrant or a refugee or whatever. And I tend to think that Superman's story tends to be more the story of the immigrant to America because he never really he has somewhat of an outsider perspective, but he's never known any other home. Whereas Supergirl, I do think qualifies much more as a refugee. And so yeah, that is really interesting the way that she does have to kind of come to this and through interactions with her cousin try to decide what kind of life she's going to live and try to make a positive change in the world. Yeah, I can see what would really I can definitely see what's interesting about the character in that regard.
Yeah, I do you like Power Girl back?
I don't know a whole lot about Power Girl. I just kind of know the basics of her. That she's Earth 2 Kara. She's a little bit older, a little bit more brash and powerful. But I've not really read a lot of Power Girl. I really only know her from the animated appearances she's made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you were saying that you really got into her through Justice League, and I know there was kind of sort of a Power Girl who was a villain in that show, but I'm very I what little I know of Supergirl, I know even less about Power Girl. I just know her from like the Justice Society comics, but I know she's similar to Supergirl, was later kind of made into a Supergirl from another world, and so I was just curious if you like her also.
I mean, there's nothing about her that strikes me as bad. I think I need to experience some material with the actual version of the character that's based around her to get into it. People keep telling me I need to read the Jimmy Palmiotti run.
Yeah.
I've just never gotten to it.
I've read the first volume. It's really good. But yeah, read Supergirl first because I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting though because like I'm trying to think more and more about like what I've seen and stuff of Supergirl, and I got to talk about Bombshells because I fucking love that book. If no one's gathered that from the last 3 years of me talking about it, but
I think every other sentence out of your mouth for the last few years has been Bombshells.
Yeah, it's great. But like it's interesting because there's so much tweaking to make everything work in that universe, and in that. She's Russian, specifically Soviet, and because of her powers, gets kind of chased out of the country because of like the whole coming Cold War politics and the dangers she presents, and so it's just interesting to think about her as the refugee more than anything because like I am trying so hard. And I cannot think of anything I've seen of Supergirl where she is not portrayed mostly as a refugee. and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, one moment specifically I can think of that really screams that to me is, and I've only read a couple of issues of the comic arc it's based on, so I can't say if it happens in the comics too, but in her post-crisis origin, which was adapted into Superman Batman Apocalypse, there's that scene where she's just freaking out over some of the stuff in the Fortress of Solitude, and she comes in and she's shouting to Clark in Kryptonian, and Batman's there, and he's like, can you speak English so we can understand what you're saying? And she's like, it's hard when I've just learned it and I'm panicked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a really good way to look at it. It's those like microaggressions from Batman. He's so suspicious of her because she's foreign and stuff. It's interesting to see how that all works out. So let me ask you that, because this is a movie that I have mixed feelings on. What do you think of Batman Superman Apocalypse?
I have pretty mixed feelings on it too. There's
let me say specifically Supergirl's portrayal in it.
There's never really been a perfect Supergirl origin in my mind, because when it comes to her, I am one of those really obsessive, everything has to be just the way I want it fans. But there's definitely some good stuff in there. I do like the whole her speaking Kryptonian and Clark just immediately accepting her, but Batman still being suspicious kind of angle. It's there's weird things from that are just left over from the weird way comics were at that time, especially comics written by I believe that was a Jeff Loeb book.
Yeah.
Where she arrives and she's completely naked, which really makes no sense, because the only reason baby Superman was naked was because he was a baby and he was just kind of placed into the rocket in swaddling cloths.
I think in the comic they said that it was so she could absorb more solar radiation. It's still really creepy. But that was their explanation. I'm not defending it. I'm just that was their way of doing it.
I would have liked more time with Kara on the island, just because it's like she can't control her powers and she's really weird, but she's trying to throw herself into Earth life. She's on the island. We cut to like months later and she's just like, I'm chilling. It's great. So that it's like a bunch of development happens off screen. And the thing where she basically becomes Darkseid's
Stripperella?
Yeah, I was gonna say concubine, but I don't know if canonically anything happened. That's really weird and wrong, and I don't know why it's in there other than to make Darkseid the villain.
Yeah, no, like I like the idea of Darkseid tempting her and kind of like kidnapping her and warping her mind and tempting her, and that playing with Clark's more, traditional quote unquote American upbringing and Kara's more kind of freewheeling Kryptonian background. I thought that was an interesting dynamic to play with, and there was like legitimately a good idea there. But then like she's wearing the like really revealing costume and stuff. I'm like, you can definitely make an argument for it, but it seems so much just in the pandery kind of pervy old guy thing.
It's one of those things where, especially because of that outfit, it's like, this is really weird, but if it was in anime, I'd be like, all right, you're trying to sell a figure, whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
One thing I didn't like about that story, I really don't remember, and it's been a long time since I've seen the movie. It's been a long time since I've read the book. I really didn't like how Wonder Woman was portrayed. Like, she takes armed sisters to kidnap Supergirl and basically says, screw you, we're going to do this because we want to. Like, I hated that.
Yeah.
That was, surprise, surprise, Jeff Loeb can't write a good Wonder Woman. I wonder why.
Jeff Loeb can't write a good, period.
Oh, no, that's not true. Jeff Loeb could write. It was a long time ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
Far away, but he could write. So, yeah, like that movie, like both those movies, actually, I have really conflicting opinions on, but at the same time, they're both equally better than Batman v Superman. So that you got that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just her upbringing and or her portrayal in that is one of the things that kind of most introduced me to the character outside of Justice League and Unlimited and Superman the Animated Series. I can't remember what it was from, but there was like this tie-in comic between like Batman the Animated Series tie-in comic or something, and it cracked me the hell up, and I want to use that to transition to talk about her relationships with other characters. But like, there's this great moment where Batgirl's like, "Oh, is talking to Harley Quinn." She's like, "Oh, I thought you and Ivy were like, what? What like what people say about you and Supergirl? Hey!"
Yeah, their relationship in the DCAU is one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, they're kind of screwy shipper guys behind the scenes.
Yeah. No, but like her relationships with other people in the DC universe I find really interesting. The Bombshells, like the one thing in Bombshells I didn't like was Supergirl and Lois Lane getting together, just because I felt she was a different enough character from Superman in that it didn't really work. She can still be lesbian. I just didn't like the Lois Lane ship there. But there's like, it's just interesting the way she interacts with other people. Like in Apocalypse, she has a very adversarial relationship with Batman. She's kind of fast friends with Batgirl and the DCAU and stuff.
She's kind of fast friends with just any Batgirl, depending on what point in continuity we're in. Because like in pre-Crisis, her and Barbara Gordon often hang out a lot. In post-Crisis, she came around by like the time Cassandra Cain was on her way out, but there's a team-up comic with her and Stephanie Brown. Did I say Cassandra Brown? I meant Cassandra Cain.
No, you said Cain.
Okay. But there's a team-up comic with her and Stephanie Brown, and it's really cute and really funny. There's this one great scene that gets passed around all the time of her realizing that there's villainy afoot, I guess you could say, and doing the classic Superman rip the shirt to reveal the costume underneath and being like, all right, let's go to Stephanie Brown. And then she's like, I gotta change. And she's like, you don't have your costume under there? No, I've just got my bra. Does it have a bat symbol on it? Okay, that's enough.
That's funny. Joshua Williamson did this, and it seems like it's kind of persisted in really subtle ways. But Joshua Williamson, back in the Batman Superman book, in the old 52, had her and Damian team up for an issue, and he created
that's one of the best stories from that book.
Yeah, and he created a dynamic that I've always loved and wanted to see more of, wherein Damian's got a crush on Supergirl but won't admit it.
Damian is like a total tsundere in that issue. I love it.
Yeah, so like that's a dynamic I really like. Her relationship with Superman in particular is always really different. I don't think I've ever seen anybody write it exactly the same.
Yeah, a lot of people just can't seem to agree on it, and that's a big problem with Kara throughout her history, is nobody can ever quite figure out how to write her. I don't know how much you know about her early history, but when Supergirl was first invented, she was basically just an excuse for DC to have a monthly romance comic, because her first appearance is basically just she arrives on Earth and helps Superman stop a villain, and then Superman's like, I'm gonna put you in an orphanage because I can't. You can't come live with me. You'll harsh my style, and Mom and Pa Ken are old. So I'm gonna put you in an orphanage.
Or dead by that
and
point.
Yeah, I think they were actually dead at that point in continuity. But he's like, I'm gonna put you in an orphanage, and when you're ready to be Supergirl, I'll come get you. And
Damn.
she has almost no say in it, and the rest of her adventures for like, I want to say 5 or 10 years are just like comics of her pining after boys at her orphanage or the school she goes to.
See, like, no lie, I could really dig something modern that uses Supergirl for the basis of a romance comic. I think that could be really fun to do, just something that different in the DC universe now. Like, you can still have her do fights and stuff, but, like, if that was just in the background and the real drama was on all the relationship stuff, I could see that being really fun and just a fresh change of pace in this day and age.
Oh yeah, I've always wanted to see Kara have a really good romantic relationship with somebody, but it never turns out really well. Like there's of course her famous relationship with Brainiac 5, but Brainiac 5 always just comes off like a dickhead to me, and like he doesn't deserve to be with Supergirl, if I can be that kind of fan for a second. And then I forget his name, but I've been reading some issues of Daring New Adventures of Supergirl from the 80s, which my comic shop just happened to have a few issues of, so I've been buying them with my pull every week. And she's with like just a regular civilian guy who has no idea she's Supergirl in that, and it's kind of interesting, but it's also just like really generic white people romance, to be honest. And then they've never really tried anything since, to my knowledge.
That's too bad. I could see something like that.
I kind of like her with Brainiac 5, but I have seen very, very limited versions of that. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, there's like one panel where, spoilers, where she died in that story, and Brainiac 5
spoilers,
is
the most famous thing,
yeah.
the thing she is most famous for, dying.
I know. She in that we get to see him crying, and I thought that was really sweet. But then there was in the Justice League Unlimited, we get to see him basically in denial that he's got a thing for her, and I believe Bouncing Boy is like, yeah, you totally have a thing for her. I kind of like that, but
that was a good reinterpretation of it. It made him more like a Reed Richards type character.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know how to write Brainiac 5. I kind of like him being a dickhead because he's,
he's the descendant of a supervillain, like one of the worst supervillains.
He's saddled with the worst name ever. Like, it would be like naming somebody Adolf Hitler Jr. Like, that's just a horrible, like, don't do that. Don't do that to the poor kid. But, like, they did. And so, like, from the beginning, like, life was just against this kid. So, like,
Adolf
I could see
Hitler
him kind of... but, yeah. I kind of like that relationship, but I think it's one that would have
my
to...
4chan name, Adolf Hitler Jr.
But I think if you were to do that relationship, you would have to play the long game with it. You couldn't just like say, okay, they're together. Like, you have to really play it slow if you're going to try and get those two together, I think.
Yeah, that's another thing with Kara, is I feel like, because people always make those jokes, Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex with Superman, I feel like with Kara, because she's a teenager most of the time, you could actually do the romance, I have these incredible powers, I don't know if I could actually be with somebody and do it right. I feel like you could actually do that story really well if you wanted to and put some effort into it, because I haven't read the Convergence Superman book, but from what I understand, they just kind of skip over the conception of Jonathan Kent in the comics. They're just like, yeah, Lois is pregnant now, and real Superman is back in the DC universe. And they never touch on that at all.
No, that could be interesting stuff to do with her. It's kind of hilarious. We're getting close to the end of the episode, and no one has seen fit to bring up probably the most popular thing with Supergirl, which is the CW show.
Okay, here we go.
I've only seen, I think, 2 episodes, so I don't know enough to make a comment.
I've seen like a handful too, and I just don't like it. I think it's like a lot of the CW shows, I tend to think, where it's like really poorly written and just like kind of really garbage effects sometimes. Like, was the episode with Banshee was one that I saw, and like the justification for why she became Banshee was pretty stupid. But what can you do? It's comics. But then like there's this whole team up thing. And just randomly, she decides to, like, paint her face like a fucking zombie. It's not like her face slowly turns into, like, the zombie look like Banshee from the comics. No, she's just like, oh, well, I've got to get a costume together. And she just fucking paints her face. I'm like, that's dumb.
I've watched the first 2 seasons of the show. I know the 3rd season has ended yet, and I think the 4th season is in production at the moment. The first season is a real mixed bag for me because the opening, like, 5 or 6 episodes are just repeated the same 3 or 4 things of, Kara doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life. Her boss is kind of a bitch. Isn't it great that there's a female superhero now? Oh gosh, I'm having this real problem with being a superhero. If only there was somebody I could talk to about it. Maybe I could call my cousin. Nah, that'd be stupid. And then it kind of got okay. There's some stupid stuff about the end of the show. Like, they just kind of forgot that they set up that there was a Kryptonian army. that happens in the finale. And then the second of the season of the show is kind of just a rom-com with superpowers. Like, it becomes very relationship heavy. And, like, I'm not saying a Supergirl show can't be that, but it's like the most bare bones, stereotypical rom-com stuff you can think of. Like, I know people really like Mon-El in that show for some reason, but he just seems like generic boyfriend in every female character focused rom-com I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been able to get into it. Like, I remember watching the pilot and I got really annoyed that they, like, seemed to just refuse to say Superman or Clark Kent. They just kept, like, saying your cousin, and I was like,
the big
stop
guy
using that.
It's so weird, especially because he finally shows up in season 2, and, like, I forget the name of the actor, but he's a really good Superman. I really like
Tyler
Hoechlin or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, I really liked him in those episodes, and also I would be remiss without mentioning, despite being in a very mediocre show, Melissa Benoist is like a perfect choice for Supergirl. She plays the role like almost exactly how I would want it done.
Okay. Like, I haven't had a problem with her performance from the bits I've seen here and there. I just didn't like the way the show was written and stuff, so I never really got it. I kind of dropped off on all the CW shows. The only one I was interested in was Flash, and then the end of season 2 pissed me the fuck off.
Yep. Here.
Yep. So, like, I kind of just fell off of all of those.
The CW shows, the rule with them kind of seems to be like, if you like the character, watch the first season and then don't watch anything else.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting that she's got a show. I think the fan theory right now is that CW's getting Batwoman, but she like necessarily has to come from Supergirl's universe.
It's really weird because they've been teasing, at least in the CW show seasons I've seen, they've been teasing that Batman exists in both universes. And now they're like, we're bringing in Batwoman. And I'm like, okay, but that's like way down the line in Batman continuity. So how are you going to explain this before introducing this person before you introduce everyone else? Mm-hmm. And also, in its first season, because I said they've teased that Batman exists in both universes, they did that in the second season of Supergirl. In the first season of Supergirl, they acted like her and Superman were the only two heroes in that universe.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Regardless, though, I don't know. It's a whole thing and a half with the CW shows, which is partly also why I don't watch them. It's just it's too complicated now. Comics are complicated enough. I don't need TV comics. Anyway, so let's let's go ahead and go on to recommendations with Supergirl then, because I don't know, it was a good discussion, but I feel like we'll just spin our wheels and like go, oh, what about this? What about this? So let's go ahead and just move on to recommendations. I'll go first, and I will recommend, though it is a mixed bag, Superman Batman Apocalypse. Obviously, the entirety of Bombshells, Kara has an absolutely fantastic arc throughout that series. The way she loses her sister in the middle of it and like can't fly because of that is absolutely heartbreaking. Just a really, really good series, and I really like her arc in there. And I don't know, maybe if you're able to overlook some of the crap that bothers me, some of the Supergirl TV show will work for you, because I've caught bits and pieces and enjoyed some of it, but just not overall. So
Okay. Is it my turn or Back's turn?
go ahead.
Okay, well, I think that for me, above everything, the best Supergirl story is Supergirl the movie. I think that, no, I'm just kidding. No, I would go with Supergirl Being Super, that 4-issue miniseries that really got me in the mood lately. It's a good coming-of-age story first, and then superhero story second, but I think it balances both very well. And then I would even say the Peter David Supergirl run of the 90s. It's not Kara, the cousin of Superman, but it is a version of Supergirl.
Is that Matrix Supergirl?
That is what that is, yes.
Oh, God.
It's kind of Matrix-y, but it's like a blend of Matrix and some other character. Like it's I don't know, it's kind of confusing at first, but then it's really good stuff. Like it's Peter David superhero stuff, and I think he's pretty solid in the 90s. So I think it's pretty good, but it is, if you're a little confused about Supergirl already, I wouldn't recommend it as your first Supergirl story, because you should kind of acclimate yourself to some of the mythology around the character before you get into that run.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, most of the stuff you guys recommended is like pretty good, but it's all like kind of iffy for me. So like, if you want just really good straight stories with Kara, I'd recommend Superman Batman number 62 and 77. Those are two one-off stories with her and different versions of Robin. 62 is her and Tim Drake dealing with a thing. I don't remember exactly what goes down in that story, but I remember liking it quite a bit. And 77 is the her and Damian issue we talked about earlier. Both just really good Dunham ones from what I remember of them. Mm-hmm. Another great Dunham one that actually came out quite recently, Supergirl number 19 from the Rebirth run. Just a really good story of her helping a person who's dealing with some shit in their personal life, and just kind of being a good friend to an average citizen. It's bogged down in a little bit of continuity stuff, but you can kind of just ignore it and power through. I'd recommend the Rebirth, or not the Rebirth, the New 52 run of Supergirl was actually pretty decent, aside from a really bad costume design, in my opinion. Up until Hell on Earth. Hell on Earth, everything kind of goes to shit, and it never quite recovers from there because they keep changing.
Well, yeah, it's Hell on Earth.
Yeah. But most of that run is really, really good up until Hell on Earth. The first arc's just a bit iffy, but it gets good after that. I really like that book's interpretation of Banshee and her relationship with Kara. So yeah, that's like some good within the past 10, 20 years stories to check out.
Okay.
I don't think I have anything else I'd be like, you'll want to go to this right away.
All right, that's fair. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the Comics Kid 299.
And I am the Final Hope.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.